Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a closer look into Malaysia's security world, specifically at the Malaysian Defense Intelligence Organization, the MDIO.
That's right.
We've got some interesting materials here, official bits, news reports, even some academic takes to try and piece together what this agency is all about.
Yeah, it's an important one, though maybe not always in the headlines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission, if you like, is to unpack the MDIO, its purpose, how it started, and, well, why it matters for Malaysia and for you listening.
Absolutely. It operates with a degree of secrecy naturally, so understanding its role and how it's changed over time is pretty key.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The official name in Malay is Pertubihan Perisikan Pertahanan Malaysia.
Right. And they even provide the Jawi script.
Yes, and it officially kicked off on October 1st, 1981. What really jumps out, I think, is this comparison they make to the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency.
The DIA comparison, that's significant.
It really is. It gives you a sense of the scale and importance they're aiming for within the Malaysian Armed Forces structure. It's positioned as, a major intelligence player.
That DIA parallel is, well, it's very telling. You think about the DIA's job gathering and analyzing military intelligence across the board. It suggests the MDIO has a similar kind of strategic big picture role for Malaysia's defense. And it didn't just spring up overnight, did it?
No, not at all.
It actually evolved from the Defense Intelligence Staff Division, the DISD.
Yeah,
And that took over from the Joint Intelligence Directorate back in '81.
right. So a definite restructuring happened there.
Yeah, and that kind of change usually signals something, maybe a push for more efficiency or perhaps a shift in what they saw as the main priorities.
And the main driver initially for setting up the DISD was very specific. It was about countering the Communist Party of Malaya.
During the Second Malayan Emergency.
So its early days, its core focus was shaped by tackling a really serious internal threat. How might that, initial experience still play a role today?
It's a really good question. I mean, obviously the threats Malaysia faces now are much broader than in the '80s. But that experience, that grounding in counterinsurgency, it probably embedded a deep understanding of intelligence work in, well, tricky asymmetrical situations.
Yeah.
Those skills, they could still be very relevant for modern threats, things like terrorism or even cyber threats.
That makes sense. Looking at the structure now, it's led by an Army Lieutenant General.
Which tells you about the seniority. It's a high-level position.
Definitely. And it's not just an Army show, is it? It's explicitly tri-service. So Army, Navy, and Air Force intelligence branches are all part of it.
Yeah, that tri-service element is crucial. It means you're pooling expertise from across the entire military.
Right. So you get a more complete, coordinated view of potential threats, whether they're, land-based, maritime, or airborne.
Exactly. A holistic perspective.
And the reporting lines for the Director General, pretty significant. Straight to the Chief of Armed Forces, the Minister of Defense, and the National Security Division.
Which really highlights just how central MDIO is. It's plugged into the very top of the national security decision-making structure.
And we know the HQ is in Kuala Lumpur, right in the thick of things, administratively and defensively.
Yeah, strategically located. Now, something else that's quite interesting is the recent change in its public face, so to speak.
The name change.
Exactly. Moving from Armed Forces Defense Intelligence Staff Division, or DISD, to the Malaysian Defense Intelligence Organization, MDIO, that was announced back in September 2022. And there was a new logo, too.
We saw that mentioned on the Malaysian Defense website, yeah.
And, these things aren't usually just cosmetic. A name and logo change often points to something deeper, maybe a strategic shift or wanting to project a more unified image.
Or maybe broader, like signaling a role beyond just the purely military.
Could be. Perhaps aiming for more international collaboration or emphasizing its contribution to overall national security, not just defense in a narrow sense.
It tracks. And linked to that, there was the leadership change pretty recently, too.
Right. In December 2023, Lieutenant General Datuk Ahmad Norihan Jalal retired.
And his deputy, Lieutenant General Dato Mohd Razali Elias, stepped up. Became the 18th Director General.
Yeah, the Airtime's News Network report mentioned that, even noting a congratulatory message. It underscores that these transitions are, noted events within the defense community.
Leadership changes in intelligence are always worth watching, aren't they? New perspectives, potentially new priorities.
Definitely. Now, one of the sources, that UMNO online news report from February 2024, it mentioned a working visit to the MDIO.
Okay.
The details in our summary are brief, But the fact it happened suggests, well, ongoing engagement between the agency and political figures. Maybe about aligning on strategy, maybe about showcasing capabilities or needs.
Yeah, keeping those lines of communication open. The material also flags the Royal Intelligence Corps as being part of the organization.
Mm-hmm. Corps Rizik Diraja.
Right. For anyone listening who might not know, that's a specific corps within the Malaysian Army focused on intelligence. So its involvement highlights the Army's contribution to the overall MDIO setup.
It shows how different specialist capabilities from the services feed into the larger structure. It's not monolithic.
Good point.
And if you put this in a slightly wider context, that mention of security sector reform.
From the contemporary Southeast Asia Journal summary.
Yeah, even though it's just a book review reference, it's suggestive. It hints that the MDIO's own evolution, like the name change, is probably happening alongside broader thinking in Malaysia about strengthening the whole security setup for, well, the modern world.
Right. These agencies don't operate in a vacuum. They have to adapt as the strategic environment changes.
Precisely, they're part of a bigger picture.
And one final detail, maybe not surprising, but noted, the actual size of the MDIO. Classified.
As you'd expect, really.
Yeah, adds a bit of intrigue, but mostly just highlights the sensitivity of their work. You can understand why headcount and budgets aren't public knowledge.
Absolutely. Discretion is paramount in intelligence. So if we pull all these threads together, what do we have?
Well, we see an organization, the MDIO, born from a very specific internal threat, the communist insurgency.
Right. It started as the DISD.
Then it evolved into this central tri-service military intelligence body.
Guided by senior leadership, reporting right to the top security players.
And recent changes, like the name and leadership, suggest it's, actively adapting. It's not static.
Definitely seems to be an ongoing process of modernization, adapting to today's security landscape.
And it just underscores how vital a dedicated professional military intelligence agency like MDIO is for any country's security, doesn't it? They provide that crucial understanding needed for big decisions.
Absolutely critical. Which brings us to a final thought, perhaps, for you listening to mull over. Given where the MDIO came from, that initial internal security focus, and where it is now a modern tri-service agency in this really complex global picture, what do you think are the biggest intelligence challenges and maybe the new priorities for Malaysia today? What kind of threats might be demanding the MDIO's attention now?
That's a good question to leave things on. Food for thought, definitely.